Canada? For many years, it was known as the US's most reliable source of energy, its largest trading partner and perhaps the invisible supporter of North America. But now the picture is changing fast. Donald Trump's new tariffs have turned Canada-US relations upside down. In response, Canada did not sit idly by and responded with an unexpected move. If necessary, we will cut off the electricity and turn off the lights. No one in North America is used to such a harsh energy restraint.
The head of the Canadian province of Ontario is, listen to this, threatening to cut off electricity exports to the United States.
On the critical minerals and electricity we supply to the United States.
1 month ago, Donald Trump paused the 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico.
What we told him from the beginning, which is that these tariffs hurt Americans. They hurt American companies.
Is this move pushing two close allies to the brink of a trade war? Is Canada determined to retaliate against Trump's tariff pressure by cutting the flow of electricity to the US? These two giants, long known as friends, are now threatening each other. If Canada does indeed pull the plug, neighboring states could be left in the dark. Here we explore the behind-the-scenes and possible consequences of this stunning development. We'll even cut off the flow of electricity to the US. We'll turn off the lights. The latest statements coming from the heart of Canada are one of the most shocking moves in a new trade war in North America. The two neighbors, who until yesterday were perceived as allies in all circumstances, shoulder to shoulder on every issue, now do not hesitate to take each other to the limit. The 25% tariffs Donald Trump imposed on Mexico and Canada during his presidency had already upset the balance in many sectors, from steel to aluminum. Then, from the Canadian side, there was a cry of, "No more tolerance for the last straw." For the last 2 weeks, the headlines in the Canadian press and even in American media outlets have been dominated by stories like, "Could Canada stop exporting electricity?" To some, this is just a threat. Others say they could go so far as to pull the plug suddenly one night. Let's take a look at the details of this striking development. At a press conference in Ontario on Sunday, March 2nd, 2025, Ontario Premier Doug Ford shook the agenda with the following words. If the Trump administration insists on these unfair tariffs, we will use our Trump card. The option to cut off Canadian electricity exports is on the table. I'll do it with a smile on my face if necessary. When Ford made this statement in front of the cameras, he gave a date and added, "As of March 2nd, I want to say, we will play the game by the rules and no one should test our patience." This sentence had a big repercussion. Because Canada's electricity sales to the United States are not just a small number. According to Natural Resources Canada, the country is estimated to have exported around 65 terawatt-hours of electricity in 2024. About 90% of this goes to the United States. So, when the Ottawa administration turns off this tap, turning off the lights is not an exaggeration. In the evening of the same day, a statement from a source close to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was also noteworthy. The Prime Minister has been considering different scenarios in response to the Trump administration's unfair tariffs. Electricity is just one of them. The American side should not underestimate Canada. The remarks were a reminder of Canada's share in the flow of electricity to the US, especially to the northern regions and some states. States like New York and Vermont, for example, rely heavily on hydroelectric power from Canada. Official data shows that by 2023, US electricity imports from Canada amounted to about $2.3 billion in trade. Low-cost, clean hydropower is helping many families in the region pay their electricity bills. If Canada were to cut off this supply now, consumers' bills could soar, and some areas could even face electricity supply shortages. On the Trump side, there was a different kind of activity on March 3rd, 2025. A White House spokesperson told reporters at noon, "Canada is our close ally and friend. The tariffs were imposed purely for national security and fair trade reasons. We are closely monitoring threats of retaliation, but the United States will not back down." Trump, who will address Congress on March 4th, 2025 on the official calendar, will continue to defend the trade war, the spokesperson said. On the same day, a news article titled "Trump Prepares to Address Congress the Day After Criticizing Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau for Retaliatory Tariffs" was published. The article claimed that senior White House advisors had warned Trump not to escalate tensions with Canada or power shortages would soon hit the Midwestern states. However, Trump ignored these warnings, insisting that tariffs are our most effective weapon to protect US interests. The president also announced that reciprocal tariffs would begin on April 2nd, covering imports from all countries that impose import duties on US goods. But can Canada really pull off this reckless restraint? No matter how fervently Ontario Premier Doug Ford or politicians in Ottawa talk, a blackout is not an immediate measure. energy analysts say. Canada's electricity transmission lines and the US grid are very integrated. There is a vast infrastructure built over years of cooperation. You can't just pull the plug. But methods such as intermittent or limited supply, reducing dam capacities, are certainly possible. Patterson also referred to the 2023 data and said, the economic value of the electricity Canada sells to the US is about $2.5 billion. This amount is a very important source of income for provinces like Ontario and Quebec, but if the crisis deepens, Ottawa may say, we will accept the loss of income, as long as we intimidate the US. Since this loss of revenue would also cause Canada a lot of trouble, experts say it is more of a diplomatic blackmail. But in the history of diplomacy, the energy card has always been a powerful weapon. Doug Ford's words on March 6, 2025, "I'll do it with a smile on my face," show that he is fully aware of this threat. Ford thinks Trump's 25% tariffs on Canada are completely unjustified and says, if you cut off our agricultural products, we won't hesitate to cut off your vital electricity. Sources close to Ford said. Not only electricity, but we can cut the flow of raw materials such as nickel and steel, he argued. Many products made in Ontario's factories enter industries in the United States. In the event of a blackout, both American industry and Canadian exporters would suffer, creating what some see as a lose-lose scenario. This move is one of the harshest reactions to Trump's 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, which was put into effect at the beginning of 2025. According to US Department of Agriculture data, steel, aluminum, and agricultural products from Canada were subject to 25–30% tariffs, creating a risk of shrinking trade volume. In a press release on February 1, 2025, Justin Trudeau said, "This is unacceptable. Our largest trading partner, our close friend, the United States, must immediately withdraw these heavy tariffs. Otherwise, we will retaliate in different sectors." In the same speech, he said, "We must defend ourselves. There is an attack on the livelihoods of Canadians." These remarks are also available in written form on the Prime Minister's office website. The date, February 1, 2025. Since that day, Ottawa has been searching for an answer to the question, what can we do? We will cut the power, we will not hesitate. In early March can be seen as part of this long preparation. So who would be affected if Canada were to experience a blackout? If Canada decides to stop exporting energy, almost every region of the country will feel the heat, or lack thereof. Oil refineries in the Midwest and Great Lakes region rely on this oil to make gasoline, jet fuel, and diesel. In 2023, the US imported 1.4 million barrels of Canadian crude each day, more than half of its daily imports of 2.4 million. States like Maine, far from other regional energy infrastructure, could face electricity cost increases of up to $200 million per state. The state of Vermont has partnered with Hydro-Quebec to ensure that the Canadian company will supply 25% of the state's annual energy needs by 2038. Similarly, New York has an agreement to import megawatts until 2030. Both agreements could easily fall apart if Ford's threats come to fruition, leaving much of the Northeast scrambling for a new source. Canada-US electricity trade is nothing new. According to the latest statistics, about 60–65 TWh of electricity passed from Canada to the US in 2024. Canada uses the profits from this trade to invest in its hydroelectric infrastructure, while the US gets access to a cheaper and cleaner energy source. Quebec, in particular, feeds the New England region with its large hydro plants. Ontario sometimes feeds electricity to New York and Michigan. Now, political tensions have put this grid cooperation at risk. Although a complete blackout is impractical in the short term, even steps like "we'll cut exports in half, we'll cut back sometimes," could be enough to increase the electricity bill of American consumers. This would be counterproductive for the very groups Trump aims to please. Since voter pockets are always critical in politics, Canada may be hoping to force Trump to back down with this move. On the US side, the rhetoric is it's nobody's place to de-energize our country. Some Republican senators close to Trump said, "We've had a treaty of friendship with Canada for many years, and getting into a war with Canada would do no one any good. But tariffs are a matter of national security. Canada should understand," they said. But Canadians do not find this national security argument sincere. They say we're allies, but they put up huge barriers to our trade. "Is this friendship?" he asked. As a result, tensions are running high, and the question, can Canada keep the US in the dark, has become a hot topic in the US press. Does the US rely on Canadian electricity? The United States and Canada have enjoyed a symbiotic energy relationship for nearly 6 decades. According to Canada's official website, America's northern border is home to more than 35 major electricity transmission lines and 70 oil and gas pipelines, linking the countries in the world's closest energy relationship. As of 2021, Canada's energy exports to the United States totaled $112 billion. In contrast, the United States imported $25 billion worth of energy to Canada. In 2024, Canada provided 62% of American crude oil imports. Other energy exports from Canada include hydroelectric power, natural gas, and other fossil fuels. According to the Centre for Strategic and International Studies, the energy relationship between the two countries extends beyond commodity trade, encompassing a variety of shared economic, security, and environmental priorities, though not always the same. In some way, shape, or form, all 50 states receive energy or benefit from the US-Canada energy trade. So what is behind Trump's feud with Canada? It is argued that Trump's animosity towards Canada is primarily personal. Some have cited problematic business deals there. A Toronto hotel and condominium complex that liquidated in 2016, and a Vancouver hotel that failed the following year. Both became magnets for protesters. Others pointed to his fragile relationship with Trudeau. Photos emerged of Trump greeting Europe with a kiss on the cheek at the 2019 Group of Seven meeting in France. A few months later, Trump called his Canadian counterpart a hypocrite for appearing to mock him at a meeting of NATO leaders. The year before, Trump accused Trudeau of being very dishonest and weak. But whatever the two leaders may think of each other personally or politically, the simpler explanation for Trump's recent aggression is that the president sees Canada less as the United States' closest ally and more as just another deadbeat country determined to rob America. And he is determined to use Washington's vast economic leverage over Ottawa to renegotiate existing agreements on more favorable America First terms. Consumers' concerns were also highlighted in the article. What's behind Trump's feud with Canada, and how could new tariffs affect you? If electricity supplies are cut, housing prices or factory production costs could rise, especially in the northern states, and backup sources could come online, but these are more expensive solutions. In the same article, it is stated that Trump gave clues about how he will defend the trade war in his speech to Congress on March 4, 2025. According to the sources, Trump will include statements such as, "Tariffs have revitalized American industry. We will not bow down to anyone." On the other hand, it is not yet clear what it will take to anger Canada this much. According to political scientists, Canada's "will cut off the electricity" statement could start as a bluff and turn into reality. Even though the country is heavily dependent on the United States for its import-export balance, it may think, in the long run, we can turn to other markets. At least we can accept our loss, but preserve our dignity. Economists say this is a lose-lose situation. Trump, who has strangled Canada with high tariffs, will inflate the electricity bills of US citizens or industrial costs in retaliation. This could create a backlash in American domestic politics. Why are we pushing Canada so hard? We are paying the price. Perhaps Canada wants to mobilize this reaction. As a matter of fact, one analysis commented that Canada's restraint may disturb the US electorate and force the White House to compromise. Another dimension of the issue is the possibility of a giant trade crisis in North America, when combined with the tariff war with Mexico. This risk has been talked about since Trump said, "I will review NAFTA." Now the picture has become clearer. Canada and Mexico have started to play their trump cards against the US 25% tariffs. Canada's trump card could be energy, Mexico's could be agriculture and automotive spare parts. In the end, if the US escalates tensions with both of its neighbors, supply chains, production flows, and price balances could be upended. It is often repeated that there are no winners in trade wars, but Trump insists that it's easy to win. Canada, on the other hand, seems to resist by saying, "We will pay the price, but the US should pay it too." In such a situation, the question, "Can Canada really turn out the lights for the US?" seems exaggerated, but not completely outlandish. Yes, Canada could fulfill Ford's promise, but it will take more than his threats to enact tariffs or pull the plug completely. In 2024, when Trump and Ford first voiced their warnings, Ontario or any province would need the federal government's approval to retaliate against Trump, experts said. If this threat materializes, even short-term blackouts or restrictions could leave industry and residences without power in some US states. The final word will largely depend on the will of the leaders and the public reaction. If the White House does not show any diplomatic flexibility by saying, "Keep the high tariffs coming," Ottawa could really play its cards close to its chest. On the other hand, those who believe that no one would enter into an energy war with a friend believe that this will end with a compromise at some point. The dates, official statements, and figures are clear. On March 2nd, Doug Ford said clearly, "We are ready to do it." On March 3rd, the Trudeau government said, "We are keeping all options on the table." On March 4th, Trump addressed Congress and said he would defend the tariffs. There is little sign of compromise. We will see what happens in the coming days. Will this confrontation be limited to trade, Or will there really be a blockade of power grids? Will Canada be economically able to withstand such a tough move? Or will it say, after a while, our loss of revenue is too great, let's give up? Will consumers in the US be fed up with rising electricity and agricultural prices and say to Trump, enough is enough? The questions are multiplying, and eyes are on both Ottawa and Washington for answers. Seeing these two neighboring giants of the world at such odds is a reminder of how fragile global trade is. In a trade war, no one emerges victorious, but when leaders go all in, the losses are always bigger. Canada's threat to turn out the lights is the most sensational face of this confrontation. Let's see if Washington will take one last compromise step before condemning the entire continent to darkness, or if the tariff walls will rise even higher and Canada will pull the plug. For now, we will wait and see. What do you think? Let's meet in the comments. Thank you for watching.